What? Good evening. The Planning Board of Irvington is in session, 7 o'clock or thereabouts. Just a few words about this evening. It's going to be a hybrid. It will be half Zoom by the applicant, and we are in person. Public, there is some public here in person, but you can do by Zoom. The questions will be there'll be no difference between a Zoom comment from the public or an in-person comment. And because it's a hybrid, we've done this once before, and there's a delay in the audio. And in the previous meeting, because of the delay, people were talking at the same time because they didn't realize someone was still talking. So please be patient and try not to interrupt and wait till the end of a sentence. Okay, with that said, I'd like to approve the minutes, or at least review the minutes of March 2nd. Sarah, you have the minutes, they're all set?
They're all set.
All right, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve March 2nd.
Do we have a second?
Yeah.
All in favor to approve the minutes of March 2nd?
Aye.
Aye. Any objection? No. Sarah, you have the taxes are all up to date?
Yes.
Okay. There's an agenda that's been sent around. There'll be 2 items that will not be heard tonight. That's better put my glasses on so I can see it. 20 Elm Park, that's 2022-05 is not going to be heard. And number 3, Dow's Lane, 2020-11 will not be heard, even though they were scheduled to be heard. Situations came up that they're not going to be heard. Order of appearance tonight will be Field Terrace, 2022-12. Number 2 will be Deep Hollow Close. Number 2, Deep Hollow Close, 2022-07. Number 3 will be North Brook Lane, 2022-06. Number 4, 12 Maple Street, 2021-31. Number 5 is 90 Fargo Lane. That's 2020-27. Number 6 is 7 Irving Place. That's 2022-11. Number 7 is 9 Strawberry Lane. That's 2022-09. And number 8, last, is Columbia University, 136 South Broadway, 2022-11. Sometimes call it the Nevis property. Okay, going back to number 1. We have someone from Zoom for number 1, Field Terrace, 2022-12.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. David Steinmetz, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and we note that you're not wearing a tie this evening.
If you give me a minute, Caesar, I could step out and put one on quickly. Good to see you all. Good to be back before the board. I'm here this evening in connection with the Emily and Jamie Sahara matter. As the chair indicated, the Field Terrace vacant property, about approximately 2 acres. I'm joined this evening by my colleague, Casey Brenner, by our project engineer, Alan Pilch from ALP Engineering. And though I can't see them, I assume they are out there. At least one or more of the architects, John Patrick Winberry and possibly John DePaolo from the Up Studio, our architecture team. We're going to try to be very brief because we think tonight is quite straightforward, but let me just simply hopefully get the board excited for our upcoming meetings. We're here in connection with the development. There's John DePaolo. We're here in connection with the development of a proposed single family house. And I can assure you it is going to be interesting, cutting edge design. And Casey and I are really excited to be working with John, Alan, and the rest of the team. We're here tonight strictly and solely with regard to site capacity for this zoning compliant single family house. Just by way of very brief background, as I explained to Ed a couple of weeks back, this property was once owned by Herb Allen and Susan Kathleen Wilson. It was the subject of a subdivision back in 1994, which created 2 lots. At that time, as we understand it from the subdivision plat that was signed by the village, it did go through a site capacity analysis, and there was a site capacity of 1 associated with this lot. However, there is an express note on that subdivision plat that asked that we come back or that the owner of this property come back for a, quote, redetermination of site capacity. The property is approximately 2 acres. Alan and his office have conducted a comprehensive review of the various characteristics of the site. We have submitted that information to the village's professional staff. My understanding is that they have verified that we do indeed exceed 1.0 with regard to the site capacity analysis. Our clients purchased the property in July of 2021. They have been working with John and his group to conceive of a really interesting development for this single-family house. We look forward to coming back to begin processing the site development, but we do need, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, simply a determination this evening that we achieve a site capacity of 1. If you wish for Alan Pilch to go through any of his criteria and how he conducted his analysis, he's prepared to do so. If not, my understanding is that Mr. Hahn and Mr. Marin have reviewed our data and our analysis.
I think that's right. That's fine. You ready for a question, or are you finished? David, have you completed, is this on?
I can hear you.
David, have you completed your presentation?
Yes, that's our affirmative presentation. We're happy to answer any questions. I know you've got quite an agenda in front of you, and with all due respect, we think this one really is pretty straightforward.
We're okay that you cleared this because it's engineering issues and not necessarily planning board issues. There was one question we had. There's on one of the plans that we saw, there was a sewer line running through the middle of the property. Do you know if that sewer is there?
Alan, do you want to address that?
I don't know if there's, I have not personally seen this sewer, but I do know that there's a sewer easement in the southwest corner of the property. And it does indicate that there is a sewer line. The survey that was done by Ward Carpenter Engineers indicated that there is a sewer line right to the property line itself. That's what was shown on the survey. Obviously, if it's subterranean.
We don't have to resolve it tonight, but when you come in, building plans, if there is a sewer there, you need to show an easement for the sewer. And if it's a public sewer,
Yes, we will do that, Mr. Chairman. It is our understanding that there is already an easement in connection with that. It is reflected on the subdivision plat, and it is clear, at least to me, that at the time that the subdivision plat was signed back in the 90s, that there was an expectation that the sewer would come in. If I'm correct, that's Osceola over there. Correct, Alan? So we will verify the existence of what's there. I'm sure that with Ed and Doug's help, I'm sure the village has some sense of manholes, pipe connections, and other appurtenances. Between now and the next meeting that we come in for site development plan approval, we'll have an answer for you.
We can do that offline. The house on Osceola may have a line, or the outbuilding on Osceola may have a line that goes through that property. Check that.
And we have included that easement area within our site capacity analysis.
Okay. And one other thought, just as precaution, on a new home like this, do the design. It would be preferable if it meets code and does not need any variances.
Understood. At the moment, we believe it is zoning compliant. We're going to be meeting with your staff between now and filing our application to answer a couple of questions. But I think the board, as much as I can foreshadow, I think the board is going to be quite pleased with not only the aesthetics of the design, but the environmental sensitivity of the design. So I genuinely look forward to coming back with this one as soon as we can.
Okay, I mean, poll the board. Any questions, Mike?
No questions.
Dan,
No questions.
I have no questions. Mike?
No questions.
No question.
Any in public, any hands raised?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, Mary Ann, do we have a resolution?
Whereas in April 2022, Emily and Jamie Sahara applied for site capacity determination of the 2.03 acre lot they own on Field Terrace, and I've got the tax parcel indicated. Whereas Han Engineering and the village attorney reviewed the submission and confirmed the following calculation pursuant to 22482 of the zoning code. The gross site area is 88,308 feet. They had to subtract the land constituting right of way. That's 3,159 feet, which gives them a base site area of 85,149 square feet. Then there's subtractions for 11,000 plus slopes of 15 to 25% and slopes greater than 25% of about almost 14,000. So because it's not 100% of it deducted just a percentage, there's 16,050 square feet to be deducted from the base site area, which leaves a net buildable site area of 69,099 square feet. And whereas the Sahara's lot is located in the 1F40 zoning district, for which the density factor is 40,000 and 69,099 divided by 40,000 results in a site capacity of 1.727, which under section 22484 of the zoning code is rounded down to 1. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board determines that the site capacity of lot 2.170-76-27, oh my gosh, is 1. So, you know, I have 3 on there because I used an old one. So let me just kind of, who's got the copy?
Down there.
Lori,
Yeah.
you see on the very last word before the date? On both of them, change it from 3 to 1.
Very last before the date, 2 point that.
No, where it
Oh,
says
sorry.
resolve,
Okay, got it.
just change the 3 to a 1.
On both pages.
Got it.
We're happy to compromise and take 2 houses if that's, the preference.
All right, yeah, you bet. Yeah, so you can just give them back to me because I'll fix it and send Sarah the good one. The applicants aren't here anyway. Oh, she needs the signatures. Okay.
Does the board have any questions on the resolution as read?
No questions.
No questions. We have a vote, Mike? Approved. Dan?
Approved.
Caesar Manfredi, approved. Mike? Approved. Okay, that's done.
Thank you all.
What I neglected. Thank you, David. Good.
We'll see you soon. Have a good night.
I forgot to introduce everybody that's here tonight. Obviously, there's the board. Here's Michael Fulco sitting in for Kevin Furman, who's busy tonight. There's Dan McGillicuddy. I'm Caesar Manfredi. Mike Smith and Lori Davidowitz. Representing the village is the gatekeeper on Zoom is Sarah Palermo. Building inspector is Ed Marin. Consultant to the town engineer. The town engineer consultant is Doug Hahn, and the village attorney is Mary Ann Stentz. Okay, do we have number 2 around? Two being
2 Deep Hollow.
2 Deep Hollow Close. 2022. 07.
Hello, good evening. Share my screen. Just give me 1 second. Let me know when everyone can see my screen.
We can see the screen.
Great, thank you. This application for 2 Deep Hollow Close was presented at last month's meeting. Some of the comments taken away from the board related to the amount of coverage and also a question about why such a large. I'll take that one first. And if you can see by the site plan here, there are basically 2 decks. The reason for that being that the shape of the house, this area here where this one deck is, that's on the right-hand side, is at a higher floor level. The house then steps down into this area, which is where the kitchen is, and this side on the right is where the living room is. So they had doors leading out to the backyard, so the decks really provide an opportunity for them to access the backyard. And the decks basically serve 2 purposes. One is for lounging, and then the other is for, the one off the kitchen is for dining and cooking. There's also a walkway here that's part of the deck that's counted as the deck that connects this deck to the garage. So 1,000 square foot deck, slightly larger than 1,000 square feet on a house this big is probably, not overly large. I understand that it does contribute to the overage on the coverage. But again, it's a big house. And just try to address why the decks need to be as big as they are. I also just want to reiterate again that this is a post construction request. This deck was built by the previous owners. It was an estate sale, so any reasoning or purposes behind why it was built this way are really speculation on our part. In order to address the board's comments, I think this is something that does make sense in terms of why it is the way it is. The next item that I wanted to, let me just see if I can slide over here a little bit, is regarding the coverage. So there are a couple of things about the coverage. If you look at the coverage chart here, between the front entry landing and the walkways and the equipment pads and the retaining walls, you can see it's a very steep slope. There are a lot of retaining walls. In terms of the coverage, about 1,000 square feet of that is necessary retaining walls, again, to manage the topography, and also for walkways to get from the garage, and also from the driveway into the house, which are all at grade. So have less impact to the site. And also the terms of the deck also, I think I raised this last week, that the deck is also only at maximum a foot off ground, off the finished grade line. So it is very non-impactful to the site itself. One other thing I wanted to point out was the bonus coverage, since this is give or take, and I'm just going to use round numbers, this is about a 60,000 square foot lot, and it is in a 40,000 square foot zone. So it's about 50% larger than the zone, the size of the zone for the lots. But the bonus coverage only allows us an additional 800 square feet. So disproportionately bonus coverage for a 20,000 square feet additional lot size is something to be considered. Lastly, I do want to just bring this up. Just going to do a new share. Bear with me. So this is the comparison data of the adjacent property. I analyzed 12 properties. You can see right here, number A is the subject property. This entire portion here of the site is part of the Yardsley Country Club. So all of the adjacent properties are, in that direction to the left. I just did a random sample of properties that were immediately adjacent and in the same area. Again, it's about 12 properties that were analyzed. And as you can see, I will zoom in here just a bit. Hopefully everyone can see this. The subject lot, despite the fact that I said before, it is in the coverage allowance is 12% of the lot size. We're actually only covering 9% now, and even with the proposed deck, it's only at 10%. So again, in a sense, that's where that bonus coverage is a detriment. I get it that it does provide additional coverage, but in effect, we're actually lower than the 12% allowed. And if you look at the rest of the properties that were surveyed, of the 12 that we analyzed, 5 of them are non-conforming, including the subject property. So about 42% of these properties are non-conforming. And of the 5 that are non-conforming, this one at 10% is the lowest of the ones that are non-conforming. We've got one here that's 16%, one at 14, one at 12. So the bottom line here, I took an average of what these properties were in terms of what's allowed, what's existing, what percentages, and the average is 10%. And this subject property with the proposed deck is also at 10%.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the chart, very informative, and I guess it's reasonable to have a deck off the kitchen. That's a reasonable reason. I have no questions. Any questions from the board, Michael?
No questions.
Yeah.
No questions.
Michael?
No questions.
Lori? Sarah? Any public?
There's nobody raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Mary Ann, do we have a resolution prepared?
Whereas in March 2022, Nathan Munitz applied for site development plan approval to legalize an existing deck on his house at 2T Power Close. And whereas the deck intrudes into the side yard setback and results in greater coverage than permitted under the zoning code, therefore requiring variances from the zoning board of appeals for the side yard setback and coverage. And whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in a memorandum dated March 1st, 2022, listed a number of issues, most of which were addressed in subsequent submission. And whereas the planning board held a public hearing on the application on March 2nd and April 6th, and whereas the action is a type 2 action under SECRA and therefore requires no environmental review, now therefore be it resolved that the planning board grants the application for site development plan approval for the improvements reflected in the drawings entitled Legalize Existing Deck Munitz Residence. And they're specified, prepared by Matthew Barron's architect, subject to 1, receiving variances from the ZBA for coverage in the side yard setback, and 2, complying with the items listed in Han's April 1st, 2022 memorandum.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? No questions. We have a vote. Michael?
Approved.
Daniel?
Approved.
Caesar? Approved. Michael again?
Approved.
Approved.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the presentation and bringing the things we asked for.
Thank you. Have a good night.
And number 3, Brook Lane, that's 2022-06. Dad, are we having trouble?
Good evening, members of the board. Christopher Schmidt with Neve Group here. Apologies for the computer's not, there we go. Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. I'm here representing the Laboons. Let me just share my screen here so we can have a quick review of where we left off with the plan. My apologies ahead of time for my voice. So you should be seeing my screen now, is that correct?
Yes.
So this project consisted of removing an existing patio and outdoor kitchen And then having the addition of the new patio areas and new outdoor kitchen with the addition of an overhead structure here. We have made the updates to the site plan as per Mr. Han's request. There was a slight infringement upon the 100-foot wetland setback here, which we addressed in our updated application. We are approximately 7 feet into there. I'd love to zoom in, but I can't seem to get to there. So the existing patio and then the new patio as well will encroach slightly, as noted, about 7 feet. It's 93 feet 6 inches from the 100-foot setback here off of the stream. We have updated the plan as well with the existing downspouts. We were not able to locate any existing drainage systems on the property from the original build. We have made the necessary note additions about the existing utilities, limit of disturbance, as well as all the pathlight locations on here. We have also subsequently added a planting plan to the packet as per the landscape architect's recommendation. It appears as though she has reviewed that and determined that none of the plants are invasive. We have also addressed the screening of the existing play set along Northbrook Lane with some low-lying shrubs here, which are going to be the understory of the existing evergreens. There were a few comments from Mr. Hahn that I did have 2 questions on. If the board doesn't have any questions, I could ask those questions myself.
You're okay, Doug. It's fine.
Okay, so one of his notes was about adding detail from the outdoor kitchen. This detail here onto the site plan. I guess I just wanted clarification on that, if that was okay.
I just didn't see it on the site plan itself. I think I saw it in the renderings, but I don't think I saw it on the site plan.
So are you looking for that detail?
I don't think I saw it on the plan. I think you maybe mentioned it as a kitchen.
Yeah, so we have the outdoor
Outdoor
kitchen here, and that was just a detail of the exterior wall there.
Yeah, I just didn't see it. I don't see a label for the wall.
Okay, all right, so we can add that label there. And then the other question I had was we had submitted the cut sheet for these path lights, which is this sheet here, which in my reading of the code and the dark sky compliance, that having a lid on it and only downlights, it should meet the requirements of the village lighting code. I just didn't.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if there's any further clarification needed from myself on that.
Nope, that's it.
Okay.
I think you submitted the permit for the wetland. You put the play set on, you fixed the foliage, screening. Seems like you did everything we asked. Any comments from the board? Mike?
No questions, comments.
Dan?
No questions, thank you.
I have no questions. Mike?
No questions.
Laura? No. Karen, do you have anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Marianne, do we have a resolution?
March 2022, Richard LeBune applied for site development plan approval to remove a patio and construct a new patio, fire pit, outdoor kitchen, and other improvements to this property of 44 Northbrook Lane. And whereas a portion of the construction will be within 100 feet of freshwater wetlands, therefore requiring a freshwater wetlands permit. And whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in a memorandum dated March 1st listed a number of issues, most of which were addressed in a subsequent submission. And where Suzanne Nolan, the village's landscape consultant, reviewed the plans and made 2 recommendations which were satisfied to her satisfaction. And whereas Han, in a memorandum dated April 5th, found that all requirements for freshwater wetlands permit were satisfied, and whereas the planning board held a public hearing on the application on March 2nd and April 6th, 2022, the type 2 action under sequence, therefore requires no environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board issues a freshwater wetlands permit and grants the application for site development plan approval for the improvements reflected in the drawing. Is specified, prepared by Neve Group, subject to complying with the items listed in Hans April 5th, 2022 memorandum.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Any questions from the board on the resolution? No questions. We have a vote. Michael?
Approved. Approved.
Caesar?
Approved.
Michael?
Approved.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and you have the resolution. I guess you need to come by and pick it up.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman and members of the board. Have a great rest of the evening. Thank you.
Done with number 3. Number 4, 12 Maple Street, 2021-31. It should be noted that this was previously approved and it's coming in for a revision as a result of some site work.
How about now? Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Yes, we were here back in 2021 with a modest addition. And at that time, under the addition, we were showing a crawl space. And in looking into it with the contractor, the owners decided it would make a lot of sense to just go ahead and excavate the basement and pick up that additional storage and utility space with just a very modest increase in the cost of the contract. So, that's what we're showing. I'll share my screen now. Can you see that all right?
Yes.
Okay, so you can see my cursor here. This square here is the addition that was previously approved, and underneath it there was originally a crawl space. Now that's being excavated to the full extent to provide a basement. There's some quirks with all of this in that since this property borders streets on both sides, which is considered to have 2 front yards, and as such, if the distance between grade and the underside of the first floor framing exceeds 3 feet, it triggers the portion of the basement in which that occurs to be counted as FAR. And in fact, that happens at one spot, and I'll show you. So this is sort of looking at what would normally be thought of as the back of the house. This is where the basement occurs, and you can see the grade comes down, and at this point, it crosses the 3-foot threshold. So this portion of the basement over here is counted for FAR, and it turns out to be 29% of the overall basement. And so that went into the calculations. That's what triggered the requirement to come before the planning board. So here we are. I think it turns out to be 90 square feet. Once that 90 square feet of FAR is taken into account, we're still about 140 under where we're allowed to be. We fall within the allowable. And so it's pretty straightforward. We're also adding these windows to the basement to bring some light into the new basement, and one of them as an egress window with a window well here. That in turn adds about 10 square feet of coverage. Also falls within the allowable zoning, and that's where we are. So the difference to the project here is really very minimal. Previously, it really looked the same, except there were no windows. And now there are windows on this back wall. You can't really see this portion of the house from the street, even though it's considered a front yard. And so we feel like it's a modest request for approval to excavate what was once a crawl space for a basement. I think that pretty much sums it up, unless you have any questions.
The bar is still in compliance, even though it was increased slightly, and same is said for the coverage.
Yeah, it was only 10 feet of additional coverage, and we're still under the allowable.
Any questions from the board?
No questions.
Mike?
No questions, thank you.
No more questions. Michael?
No questions.
No question.
Anything from the public, Sarah?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Mary Ann, you have a
Whereas on September 1st, 2021, Robert and Teresa Forster received site development plan approval to construct a two-story addition to their house at 12 Maple Street. And whereas in April 2022, the Forsters applied for revised site development plan approval to build a full basement rather than crawl space in the new construction. And whereas Han Engineering reviewed the plans and in a memorandum dated April 2022, found no engineering issues with the revision. And whereas the planning board held a public hearing on the application on April 6th, Part 2 action under secret, resolved that the planning board grants the application for revised site development plan approval for the improvements reflected. Mine's entitled modifications to 12 Maple Street. They're specified, prepared by Michael Lewis Architects, PC, and there's no condition.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Any questions on the resolution, board? No questions asked. We have a vote. Michael?
Approved. Approved.
Caesar approved. Michael?
Approved.
Approved.
Okay, you're all set. Thank you very much. That was a good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Have a great night.
The next is 90 Fargo Lane. That is 2027. Add that this is a revision of a previous approval.
Hi, board members. I'm sorry. This is John Ferguson, Alone Architecture. Yes, we're in front of you with a revision that relates mostly to the pool area. We're hoping to make some changes to the size of the pool deck and replace the regeneration pond portion of the pool, eliminate that, which was in the courtyard, and there was some walls associated with the courtyard. I can share a screen and go through it quickly if you guys would like.
Well, we have some questions before you get there, John. It's not clear from our review what the changes are from the drawings presented. So therefore, we're not sure what the coverage might be. There's moving walls, there's moving pool barriers, and the separate, the pool barrier fencing is vague and need a separate page for that. The details of the fencing are less than illuminating. So we're having a lot of problems with going forward with this.
Well, if there's, I can clarify the changes. The area of the changes are bubbled here as item 14. There's 4 items shown on the plan. So on the north side of the house, there was a enclosed below grade shed, like a basement level shed that is proposed to be removed and replaced with a set of steps. On the pool, there's the addition of a staircase on this side, right here. And then there is the addition, the modification. This staircase came out like this, and there's the addition of an additional deck in this area here. In terms of the wall changes, this wall location has been relocated slightly, and this wall here has been extended. The wall that's been extended here is below the level of that would trigger it as building area. It is, and both of these walls are below that level. So they're in the front yard, but they're below the 6-foot limit for walls. They're at like, 4-foot limit. And then the pool barrier associated with the pool is similar to what was there originally. There's a pool barrier shown here going around this entry area, and a pool barrier shown here going around this entry area. And that pool barrier is extending underneath the stair in order to make sure that there's no access to the underside of the stair. Is there any other specific area?
I think it's more, we need to see what was removed. Maybe on your coverage breakdown on your, not so much here, you didn't show what was originally approved. You went from existing to 14. We're looking for what was approved and showing the board in detail what was changed in those areas involved.
Okay, so in terms of the coverage portion of it, again, it is the same things that were just described. The coverage diagrams could be revised, I guess. What's that?
Your existing coverage is.
Hold on a second.
That's fine.
Keep in mind that the audio is delayed and you're both talking at the same time.
Right.
Be careful of that, John, please. Ed, go ahead.
John, your existing coverage diagram is of the original house. We'd like to see what was approved as well. And then we'd like to see more detail in cross-section and elevation drawings of each section you're altering. And I'm very, very concerned about the walls you're using as barriers not being climbable. So that details can be important as well.
So I'm sorry, what was that last part? I couldn't hear you. It was breaking up. Sorry.
We're worried about, we want to make sure we understand in the elevations, the new finishes where the walls are being used as barriers to make sure they're not climbable.
Okay. In terms, so that's something different from a zoning related thing, right? That's a building permit. Okay.
No, it's part of this application, John. You have to provide evidence that you're meeting the code for the safety. In our zoning code, we have a safety code. You have to provide that evidence at this time, not a building permit, as you choose.
That's not a problem. We can show you that. We can show you that. I'm just trying to understand what's going to be revised on this drawing here. So in terms of what you're looking.
You said no.
Good.
I'll resend our memo because I guess it didn't go through.
Yeah, we didn't receive anything today, you guys. Is what's been addressed here, guys? Is that on the memo, or should we review that? Is there other stuff you typically? Okay.
Yeah, it's on there.
Okay.
John, these are issues. We're not going to be able to settle this tonight because there's obvious disagreement on the coverage, the way it's calculated. So I suggest that we close it off for now and meet with offline and settle the technical issues on the coverage and the protective apparatus for the pool, so no one inadvertently gets in the pool that they shouldn't be there.
Right. No, well, we can address all those. I'm sorry, I just didn't have access to the notes, but in terms of, but it sounds like in terms of coverage, we can add an additional diagram here that indicates like a pre and post from what's approved, basically approved to what's being proposed to change, and we can circle only those areas. We can show you the differential potentially between those.
Ed, did you hear that? Yeah. That's good, John. And I think one of our consultants that the details, you might want to put them on a separate page, details of the safety fence or the enclosure details on a separate page so it doesn't get cluttered on the listing page.
Let me just see what's there. I'll look at it. I think we can show more detail on the fence, more detail on how the coverage was analyzed or how the coverage was calculated. And we'll do that in the form of coverage diagrams. And then the last thing, Ed, that you had mentioned, and just check, make sure it's on the thing, was you need sections or elevation information for the
Yes,
post.
all the guards, where they hit the barriers, we want to make sure they're not climbable. I see horizontal lines, I get nervous
All right.
on that elevation, you just.
Yeah, this
So
is,
those- if those-
yeah, those are a concrete tile and their indentation is less than 1/4 of an inch, so I don't think it's in the category of climbable. But we can review that. And, right, and then the elevations are showing the fencing. Let's see if there's anything else here. Yeah, it's showing the fencing in both locations. We can provide.
Yeah, we're more where it merges with these other elements.
Right, okay.
You gotta repeat that.
Okay.
And don't forget about showing the originally approved coverage breakdown along with the proposed new coverage breakdown.
Yeah, we can do that. Okay. All right.
Okay,
Is there any other questions that the board has, Caesar, or is that all we need at this point?
The board, as soon as I know that you're finished with your presentation and that you understand what was said so far.
Yes, I mean, I think I understand those things. Basically, the focus on the fencing, the pool barrier fencing, the concern about climbing, the safety concern about climbing, the concrete finish, and the zoning code coverage calculation being based on a approved versus proposed revision as opposed to original versus proposed revision.
Sounds like you got it. Any questions from the board, Mike?
No question.
Dan?
No questions.
None for me. Mike?
Nothing further.
No.
Sarah, anything from the public?
Nobody is raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Okay, thank you very much, John. We'll see you next time.
Okay, thanks, guys.
On the list is 7 Irving Place, 2022-11.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Renee Byers, landscape architect representing Audie and Shireen Blum at 7 Irving Place. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I will dive into screen sharing. This is the first.
If you can hear me, you just froze. Sarah?
That's her internet connection.
Denied.
If you can hear me, we're not hearing you.
Yeah. I should know what that button does. And share screen, it was free screen.
One of the documents have our phone number.
She'll figure it out.
Okay.
His kids are probably watching
The
movies.
homeowner will let her know.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, anything past saying hello, we didn't hear. We still can't hear.
You're
you.
on mute.
You're on mute now. Oh, can't hear you. No, we cannot hear you.
There you go.
Can you hear me now? How about now?
Sounds like you're not.
Can you see me?
now. Yes, we can see you and hear you.
Okay, very good. So I think I'll proceed now. I think I should be okay. Let me just, I'm showing that I have good internet access here. So Just let me know if there's any trouble again.
Okay.
I will share my screen now then. Can you see my screen now? You should have a parcel key map up.
Yeah, we can see it.
Very good. So just a quick note about where we're located, just east of Broadway, up Riverview Road, you find Irving Place. We are in the parcel bordered by White. It's a 1.28 acre site, existing house with an existing swimming pool. I have a few site photos to run through for you. Here we have our key plan map. So the site is comprised of the house itself, a kidney-shaped swimming pool, which has some structural issues, aging pool, a number of retaining walls that have been built up over the years, a kind of ad hoc interesting area down below, which I'll show you, which is where pool equipment is stored now. And then there is a lower portion of the site undeveloped, which we want to keep that way. But there's the walls right now are falling down and it's very difficult. You cannot really easily access this area. We have a few site photos here, existing pool there. The site has absolutely beautiful view of the Hudson, which you can see on this lower photo, if you can see my little hand there. The back deck of the house is a very clumsy situation. So that's part of the proposal to fix that. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail when we show, I have a good picture of that with a sort of a before and after view of what that is. This is a view of just a few of the site conditions. Here's this little lower area I was talking about where some kind of an old concrete bunker, nothing under there, quite dangerous, lots of cracking. It's pretty messy. The existing deck, the house drops off on the back. So this portion is a walkout basement. The deck up above has a lot of rot and pretty thin on the structural side and definitely needs to be replaced to be safe. Here we combine two plans that are in the submission, but I thought it was a little easier to show you what's going on so that you can understand the project. So here we have on the left side our existing conditions and removals plan showing the existing pool decking, all shaded here, all this hardscape. You can kind of see the hodgepodge of retaining walls in different locations. Existing driveway, front walk going to the front door and walkway down the side. No changes, no footprint changes are proposed to the house. Or on the rendering side, zooming in a bit, we are showing a new swimming pool with an auto cover. So safety was an important concern. The Blums have 2 young children and the weird configuration, even if it were recommended to save that pool, which it isn't, doesn't work with a cover. So we have provided an upper deck up above. We don't show the deck on this plan. I'm showing more of a ground level plan. The only thing you see here is the stairway coming, circling down from the deck in its new location. We have a few new site amenities like a little vegetable garden, kitchen and herb garden located here, a low retaining wall across the back of the house here to kind of pull the facade together and help us negotiate some of the grade drops. New stone pool decking which has some lawn joints in between, lots of very lush planting. We had a good time with this one trying to be, we used a lot of native trees and shrubs and flowing grasses. There's a new fire pit on this side of the pool, seating area. And then we have access stair down to a new pool equipment slab. We are showing steps down the side of the property to access around the north side. And then we have a new set of stone steps that curl down into this to access a new area, which we would like to sow some meadow grass and use something called no-mow or low-mow fescue, so that basically it would feel like a meadow, but we could have a little bit of mowing to be able to let the kids come down here and play. Right now it's a mess of ticks, invasives, it's pretty bad. And then we have a whole perimeter planting of new native trees and shrubs on the outside. Here's a view, next slide, of the back, looking at the back of the house, just to give you an idea. We have our architect also available tonight, Jaime Donate, in case you have any specific questions for him. He'll be on board. If you have a question, he can pop in. But I'll just say briefly, the house itself is pretty dated from the 90s when it was built, and the windows are extremely leaky and also not very aesthetically pleasing. So we are proposing new wood siding and new windows in the same locations, but in a much more pleasing arrangement on the back of the facade. And he's done a very clever thing with the stair, bringing the stair off down over here and down and off to the side, rather than keeping it, curling down right in front and blocking the views of this lower window. There's also an old awning up on the back of the house, which would be changed to a more permanent and safe, structurally safe pergola. This is very subject to winds here and flaps around and is pretty much a hazard and not helpful. You can see, if I zoom in here on this existing photo, a lot of the kind of crazy conditions that are there now. The walls collapsing, unequal riser heights, this sort of odd ramp here falling right into the pool. So on our new version, the pool comes on center with these new basement doors and takes up far less room to open up the whole lawn area. And then this is a compressed view of the steps leading up the side. On our coverage sheet, I'll just run through the basic idea of coverage and what we've tried to accomplish here. And I'll also address one of the comments, which we'll certainly go through for our next presentation one by one, all of the various Han comments. But Strawberry Lane is the site fronts one side Strawberry Lane, and then Irving Place dead ends. So we did not realize that this was considered a corner lot because of the dead end, but apparently it is. So we will be seeking a variance for the pool location. So that would mean even the existing pool is located, it can't be located beyond the rear line of the property, which ends up being over here. So that will be included in our, we will clear up those setbacks for our next meeting, and we will seek a variance to include that. The other variance we will be asking for is we are 74 feet over that is existing. So not too much considering all we've accomplished for the Blums. However, the existing coverage as it is right now is quite a bit over. Doing our calculations, including the bonus space, we have the total existing coverage at 8,969 square feet. The allowable is only 5,341. What's interesting about this property is that the existing dwelling, the house itself is 3,829 feet. If you take that plus all the necessary retaining walls, because the property slopes, you're already, you add those two up, you're already at 4,800 and change in square feet. So it would leave us only 512 feet left for any other site amenity. So obviously that can't really work. So we tried very hard to keep our increase to the very bare minimum, and that's how we ended up. So although the numbers sound way over greater than allowable, the existing greater than allowable is 68%, and ours in our new version is 69. So we did the customary coverage analysis. Whoops, sorry, went to the wrong one. We looked at 15 properties, including ours, in our neighborhood. And we have just added, it was pointed out in the comments that we didn't have this, so we did it for tonight's presentation, and we'll fix this drawing up nicely for the next time. We calculated all the existing coverage overages around us, and then here we added a little column for tonight quickly, the greater than allowable percentage of our lot and the surrounding lots. So of these sites, of these 15 properties, 9 are over the required maximum, sorry. And they vary from ours at 69% over. There's a couple that aren't so much. We have 64%, 8%, 3.8, 39%, 77%, 51%. So they're kind of all over the map. The final two, 7% and then 33%. So we think that it's a reasonable trade-off.
Enlarge the column that you prepared for tonight.
I'm sorry, I cannot. Could you repeat that question?
You can blow it up, a little magnification.
Right, you went to
Absolutely.
the trouble of
There we go.
really can't hear.
How's that?
Much better.
Much better? Okay. Do you want me to run down the list again?
Yes.
Happy to do it. So our property, 7 Irving Place, is the top. That's parcel A. So this lists all our property size, allowable coverage, the percentage, what we have existing, and then what we're proposing. So our greater than allowable in our case is 69%, but that is only 0.8% over what exists there today. The other neighboring properties, all the ones with a yellow highlight, represent those of the 8 properties that are over, along with ours of these 15. And then we will be formally adding this column that I just did today to show you, but these are the overages of the neighboring properties. So we are right in the ballpark of others. 9 Irving Place at 64%, 95 Riverview Road, 8.8, 3.8, and on down the line. We have 76 North Broadway, 77%, Strawberry Lane, number 15 at 51%, and then 7% and 33.4 for the last one that we looked at.
I'm going to interrupt for a second. So there's only one property that's greater than yours.
There is,
77.
yes, that's right. There is only one property that's greater, but that would be true even if we were doing nothing, because our existing coverage is at 68.3% over. So we kept ours at the bare minimum, only increasing it 74 square feet. And that puts us at 0.8 over existing. We do have a couple more that are high. They have 69% and 51% over on Strawberry Lane.
As long as we're on coverage.
Yes.
There's one of our comments is that not everything was included that should have been included as coverage.
I didn't see that comment.
We look for a separate breakdown just to confirm it. Not that there was the other items, there was a lot of different miscellaneous items, so.
Okay, well, first off, our surveyor, Link Land Surveyors, did a very thorough coverage analysis, which is on my next sheet. And so we we took all of their numbers and applied it. And actually they left one out, which we put in. So we were very careful, pretty meticulous to include everything. And we have it all broken down by letter. The one thing that I did notice in the comment is we had just a simple typo. This letter G on the proposed coverage should have been an F. That's simply the existing retaining wall that we're not changing. So this F should have matched that F, that's all. Other than that, I think we're happy to talk about it, but I think that we've broken it down pretty thoroughly.
There seems to be a need for some discussion about the coverage offline.
Okay.
With our head building inspector and or the engineer.
Okay, glad to do that.
Something else about the cover. Oh, in terms of all the work you're doing, and I forget the exact number, you're going to increase by some minimal amount, which will require a variance.
That's correct.
I only have to add. Why not try to meet what's existing so you don't have to go for a variance? It's just a thought.
So are you saying, okay, well, I thought since we can try to whittle it down another 74 square feet. I didn't realize that that was the tipping point. I thought since we were altering something that was already over, that triggered the variance.
Oh, they have to
Because
get,
it's
all right,
gonna be
never
in a
mind, you have to get a
different spot.
variance anyway.
Because,
Okay, why don't you finish? I have other
Yeah,
questions, but
okay.
I'll let you.
okay, yeah, that's what I thought that we had to do it anyway. So it's funny that those few feet do make a difference to us. But you know, we can certainly try if that's helpful. All right, so let me finish my things. This is the survey I was speaking about that Link has prepared, and you can see here all of his tallies on the left-hand side, which we borrowed. So I'm not going to spend more time on this. This is just pro forma. This is our planting plan. So here we've laid out all the native trees that we'd like to use, all of our shrubs and plantings. Susan Nolan reviewed the plan. She found no invasives. She had a couple of comments, which I'll speak with her offline about. I think she might have missed the fact, she said that we didn't include the trees on the meadow portion, but indeed we did. We have a lot of trees around the perimeter. So I'll just have a call with her and make sure she sees all that. There was a comment in, we do show a lighting plan and we show some of the fixtures. There was a request for catalog cuts, which we will provide. To our knowledge, everything does meet, as we noted here, compliant with the town section. Everything's pointing down, has shielding, but we will include cut sheets of these in the next submission so that everybody's clear on that. This is the Hudson Engineering is doing our grading and storm drainage. This is their concept plan for that. They've worked on the 100-year storm requirement, and we have a few, there are a few drainage comments from Con Engineering, and I spoke with Hudson today, and they wanted me to convey that none of those are an issue for them, and they'll go through them one by one, and we'll certainly be able to comply. This plan is helpful. I just wanted to show you quickly, just because it gives an idea, just for orientation. This is in the gray shadow is the existing swimming pool. And then you see our swimming pool around it. We have a fencing plan. I think I also need to meet with Mr. Marin or Han. There was a comment about our pool fencing, so I want to go over that with them. As well as the fact that we definitely are proposing non-climbable walls. So the retaining wall, this lower retaining wall will form part of the pool barrier and will not be climbable, and we'll provide a detail that indicates that. Then the rest of this shows the arrangement of our pool fence the different colors represent the different kinds of fence. We desire this one to be somewhat transparent. We don't really want to see it very much, so we're trying to hide it in existing planting. This is the line of the existing fence that exists now, which comes around. Also, this is also existing chain link. And then it returns to the house. And the house does form part of the pool barrier, and we'll be sure to include all the details and specifications for window and door openings and alarms. And then, so the back of the house is the barrier. You follow that around and it returns to this side of the house, comes across with a gate, and then there would be a fence, as there is now, actually, along the top of the existing retaining wall, which would be the final edge. That is a quick synopsis. Those are some local houses pictures, but I think that's about it. There's happy to answer more. We submitted quite a bit more, a few more drawings, but I just tried to keep it simple here and just show you the key ones.
Yeah, you may have covered this or discussed it with the landscape architect, but she had a comment about a tree assessment on the north side of the
Yes,
property along.
that's correct. Right, he assessed all the trees that we have proposed to remove, which are located here. Well, let me, oops, sorry, went wrong way. Too sensitive, hang on. He assessed the trees on the upper portion of the property. We did not, just because it's difficult to access right now, we did not fully get down, but we can try to hike down here. She was curious about including these lower trees in our assessment. None of those are proposed for removal, but we can have him take a look if she'd like, not a problem.
And planting a lot of new trees, and one of the issues of planting new trees is disturbing the roots of existing trees. So you need to show that preserve the existing tree integrity.
Exactly. Yes, I did see that comment, and she simply had a note that we would need to do hand digging in this area, which is absolutely fine. We can also pull those even a little farther away than we have. There's no issue there.
All right, it appears that you're disturbing greater than 1 acre, and there's a DEC requirement if you exceed disturbance of 1 acre as a result of your planting plan in the meadow. You require a stormwater pollution prevention plan, SWIP, and you would need, not because of that, but because of all the work in the meadow and the way the slope is, you need erosion control shown on the plans.
Yes, I spoke with Hudson about that today because I did see that we did see that comment, and their engineer assigned to it, David, said that typically landscaping was not included in that, but what we will do is show a revised, he will absolutely add erosion fencing down in the other meadow, and we will revise the areas that we want to add the mix and just, totally keep it out of the other areas because we prefer not to go through that greater than 1 acre thing. So I think he showed me a quick diagram today. I didn't include it tonight, but we're able to do quite a large area down here and still stick to the 1 acre. So I'm sure that's what we'll be showing you next time.
And you have access, I guess it's construction access from Strawberry Lane?
Yes, we do. That is a convenient way of getting into the site.
You have to show some evidence that you have approval to use Strawberry Lane access?
Yes, we understand that from the comments that we saw. So we will be arranging for that. And we'll get letters from whoever is required. I need to do a little more research, or we have a land use attorney we can speak to. I'm not sure. The letter refers to just a single owner. So I don't know if that's the Abbott House or if it's I don't know if anyone on the board happens to know that, or if Mr. Marin knows.
I do know.
Is there one single owner, or is it considered each homeowner who has frontage on the lane?
You may have missed a comment from our village attorney. She knows it's not Abbott House.
Okay, so it would be the group of homeowners who front on the road?
I guess you can research that.
Okay, will do.
It's an LLC that you'll have to search out. We believe they're in Florida.
Okay, well,
Did you
I
get
can,
that?
so we'll into that for sure.
Okay, is your presentation completed?
My presentation is complete. Shall I stop screen share,
Okay.
or do you want me to leave it up?
So stay on until we poll the board and the public.
Okay,
Michael?
No question.
Dan?
No question.
Mike, too?
No further questions.
I just had a question about the fencing. So you showed 3 types. The green fencing, is that meant to be the wood slats that are there right now?
hang on, let me just go to my fencing sheet.
Keep in mind, Laura, the fencing might change because the current fencing is not acceptable.
Oh, that's what I'm trying to understand. So you're updating all.
We're going to update the fencing. However, the green fence will be a solid board fence, which is what exists in that particular location right now. We're proposing a nicer fence, which we're showing here, and we have it all, detailed with the sizing and everything that shows that it's compliant. The existing fence, you're right. The existing fence does not comply. It is, kind of a dilapidated post and rail that has a little mesh applied to it. So that will come out, and we would replace that with our code compliant cedar framed strong mesh interior fence for the rest, which comes across here, down here, and wraps around until it joins the high retaining wall.
Okay, Lori?
Yes.
Now, keep in mind that the fence is twofold interest, one for protection of the pool and also how it looks from the exterior.
Oh, 100, yes, we share the same goal. We want it to look beautiful.
Sarah? Any public?
There is a hand raised, but I'm not sure if it's for the next application or for this application. It's Doug McClure. So I'll allow him to talk.
He may be there for the next vote.
Yeah.
Put him on.
Okay.
Hi, no, this is Douglas McClure. I actually wanted to speak about the Strawberry Lane issue because I have to deal with it on the next project as well. And we have done a little research, so I just wanted to bring that out there for the board to consider. So we spoke to Walter Montgomery, and he said there's been a lot of research done on who owns Strawberry Lane, and nobody has an answer to that. It is not Abbott House. Des Lyons has examined the property records and hasn't come up with any owners either. So as of now, nobody knows if anybody owns the road. So getting approvals for use of that road is going to be a question that I think somehow we'll have to address, I guess, with the village attorney. But there is not a known current owner of Strawberry Lane.
Mary Ann, best to handle offline? What should we do with this?
Yeah, I don't think it's something we can deal with now.
If we can't deal with it now, Doug, you're gonna have to work with the village attorney and work out
Well,
something.
and
Of
the
course,
same thing with the previous.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
same
just
thing.
wanted to bring it up because I know
We'll
it's
get
an
to you
issue
next.
with both these properties.
For your observation, does the current applicant have any thoughts on what the future applicant has to say about Strawberry Lane?
Well, I know I don't have the answer. I only had time to do a little bit of research today, and I did find a letter in the old, I think it was an old planning board meeting from 2019, where all the current homeowners who front on Strawberry Lane had written a letter to the planning board, I guess, concerning some new proposed zoning, and they had requested in that letter, among other things, that the village take over the road so it could be ensured of having proper maintenance. I did read in that letter just what Doug brought up, that they said that the town of Greenberg has on record that Irvington owns it, but Irvington told them at the time that they did not. So it's an interesting question, and that's all I know about it right now.
Okay, well, we'll have to work that out. Well, again, the village attorney stated, that you probably didn't hear it, but she said the village does not own it at the current time.
That's, yes,
So
and
it's something-
that's what I understand from that other letter. So we'll see. Yeah.
Not only at the current time.
Just for clarification for the record, Doug McClure mentioned Desmond Lyons. He's the village justice.
He was doing that. Yes, it is counsel for Abbott House.
All right. Okay, Doug, if you sign off, and then we'll finish with this. Any other comments from the public?
No.
Or any other questions you have your Strawberry Lane, and meet with Ed Marin regarding the coverage issues we talked about and the fence.
Yes, we will.
Anything else? Ed, anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you for your presentation.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Next is number 7, is 9 Strawberry Lane, 209.
Good evening. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes.
Great. So I'm Douglas McClure. I'm the architect for the Blantons at 9 Strawberry Lane. They would like to remove an existing kitchen, and which is falling structures in rough shape, and would like to replace it with a slightly larger kitchen. And I will share my screen right now. So this is our property as it exists right now. And the area in question is this part right here, which is an existing kitchen. As I said, the structure is in dubious shape. We're not even sure there's a foundation on it. It sort of looks like it was built on the brick patio itself. And our proposal is to remove that. And in the area still defined by the retaining wall, build a new kitchen that fills up this whole area here. While we're looking at this site plan, there was a comment from Hans' office about this generator. I did not even think of that when I was working on this drawing. That's actually not a generator. It's the condenser for a split system unit that feeds this converted family room. And that was legalized in 2015. So I'm not sure if that unit that should have been legalized at that time. I know there was some electrical work there, but I'll have to go in and see if that was on there. But that was put in when that family room was created. Okay. Yeah.
need to correct it on the survey.
Oh, yeah, of course, of course. So going to our more detailed plans, essentially, as I said, we're removing the existing area and we're expanding out to this existing retaining wall. Because this retaining wall is in not the best shape, we'll remove that retaining wall and rebuild it so it can work as the foundation for the new addition itself. The addition itself comes out to that area and it sits here, and essentially the coverage in that area remains the same as a result. These are some views of the exterior. We're trying to keep it in keeping with the existing house. So it just feels like, you know, more part of the house with the gingerbread railing on the roof, etc. And then I guess I'll go back to the coverage sheet. I realized there's some between the coverage sheet and the coverage worksheet, there's some, I saw that there's some inconsistencies. We are in fact reducing the coverage because there is a small tool shed structure right here, which we will be removing as part of the construction. And we did not include that as FAR because frankly, I didn't think of it as FAR since it's so small, but we can adjust the charts accordingly. And I think that's it. We spoke about the Strawberry Lane issue, which was a comment. And some of these other comments are things we need to add to the drawings, which I can do. And then there's some stuff that I'll have Hudson add as well.
The Strawberry Lane comes into play for your site because you got drainage running into the system on Strawberry Lane. That's where
yes, and that's why I had some information that I wanted Renee to know as well. As you said, come on, let's get to the engineering drawings. Because there's not enough property here to put sort of a normal stormwater retention system like you've seen in a million properties. And since we have plenty of property here, but water doesn't flow uphill, we have to bring it out and into the stormwater system here. And that's where that issue comes up with us. The disruption to the road will be minimal, but we do want everyone to be comfortable with it. So we'll have to work with Marion and Ed to figure out what the best approach is to make everyone comfortable that we can do that.
shocked that water doesn't flow uphill.
Yeah.
To borrow from Casablanca.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Anything else?
I guess if just I have a picture of that the condenser unit if you need it. In the package I sent you, there's a picture of the back of the house. You can see the condenser all the way to the right. So I didn't know if you needed documentation of that. The other comment. Sorry.
The next time we don't call it the generator.
Yeah, I'll fix the drawings so they don't say that.
But doesn't that need a variance?
No, before 2000, the same with patios, condensers were also put odd places.
Okay. All right, you're done, Doug?
Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to assure everybody is there's a comment about dark skies lighting. The client, Mr. Blanton, is an astronomer. So we're paying a lot of attention to those lighting fixtures, and I'll present something to you at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board?
No questions.
Yeah.
No questions.
I'm done. Michael?
No questions.
No question.
Sarah, anything from the public?
Nobody's raising their hand to speak, and one comment that just came in from PJ McCulloch, is his house was built in 1868, not as stated in application in 1910.
1868. Okay, I'll make note. The records from Greenberg had the 1910, so I used that, but I will change that.
Assuming it's accurate.
Yeah.
Don't just change it,
Yeah.
you better research it.
I don't even know how we would figure that out, but I'll do my best.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we're done with this. Thank you very much, Rob. See you next time.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Sorry, one other comment just came in.
Oh, I'm sorry. Don't go away.
Oh, no, it's okay.
I'm not.
Irvington
I
Historic-
saw the comment come in.
Oh, yeah, Irvington Historical Society has a file on the house.
Did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
Doug, did you?
Yes, I did hear that, and I'll double check with the Irvington Historical Society. Thank you very much for that information.
Done with the public comment?
Yes.
Sure.
Positive.
All right, Doug, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
All right, we're done with that. All right. We are now at 136 South Broadway, Columbia University, sometimes known as the Nevis property. For those of you who don't know why it's Nevis, the son of Alexander Hamilton, James Hamilton, named it Nevis after his father's birthplace, which was Nevis in the island in the Caribbean.
If you're here to represent the application, to make the presentation, if you can hit the raise hand button, please.
Good evening, we can see you, but
Good evening.
good evening, we see you. I'd like to, before you make your presentation, I'd like to go over the public interest so that they can take notes while you're speaking, and if there's public comment, we're attempting to not replicate what you may have already said. So let me just go through the fact that there was extensive public comment. We had letters, and they were opposed, but most of the letters that were opposed for various reasons also said that they're in favor of sustainability and alternate forms of energy. There was Petrova, Trencher, Tobias, McLaughlin, Lando, Roberts, Herzl, Myers, that's Ann and Robert, and then there's another Myers, Charles and Megan, Pierre, Vincent, and read my own writing, Pasco and Libby. They had various questions, which you probably address them, and if you don't, we'll ask questions. And then there was four in favor, Coughlin, Stern, Cartwright, and Edelson. And Cartwright, who is in London, asked that we read their comment, so we'll read it. I would like to voice my support for this solar plan. I'm happy to see a business in Irvington taking such a forward-looking approach and hope that Irvington will support their efforts. I am presuming that the planning board might request the developers to include some form of vegetation screening. Just also, I'd like to make a preamble that Columbia has been a good neighbor in Irvington. At least from my knowledge, I've been here 35 years and I certainly consider Columbia a good neighbor. At the end of this process, I'm sure they will continue to be a good neighbor. Okay. Now, please, and what we're gonna do, because we're on, in case you didn't hear me before, because we told you when we were gonna start. The audio on this hybrid system, there's a delay, so make sure the person, if you want to speak, try not to interrupt, because you'll both be speaking at the same time. So we'll let you complete your entire presentation. The board will ask questions, and then for the public, then at the end of all that, we'll ask the public if there's comment. Okay, Leslie, you may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chairman and members of the Planning Board. My name is Leslie Snyder. I'm a partner in the law firm of Snyder and Snyder, and I'm here tonight along with Lara Prushki of Tectonic Engineering on behalf of Siemens Industry, who is working with Columbia to put some solar equipment on the Columbia University campus located at 136 South Broadway. In furtherance of Columbia University's sustainability plan, as well as New York State's clean energy and climate policies, Columbia University has been working with Siemens to produce power using solar equipment, fostering renewable energy in an effort to reduce the university's amount of fossil fuel use. Please note the projects are also in furtherance of the Village of Irvington's own clean energy policy, which states, and I quote, "It is in the public interest to provide for and encourage renewable energy systems and a sustainable quality of life." The property here is approximately 61.2 acres and is located in the IF80 zoning district. Pursuant to section 224-84B10 of the Village of Irvington zoning code, solar energy equipment is allowed as a permitted accessory use in this district as the power will be used by Columbia University. We are before the Planning Board for site plan approval since the property is located on the west side of Broadway and as such situated in the View Preservation Overlay District. The code provides that every application to permit the erection of any structure in the View Preservation District shall be referred by the building inspector to the Planning Board for site plan approval. The zoning board code provides that the Planning Board shall review proposals in a View Preservation Overlay District as to the best siting, dimensions, and configurations of all structures so as to cause the least possible obstruction of the view of the Hudson River for neighboring properties and adjacent public property and rights of way. Siemens and Columbia have worked together to strategically place the solar energy equipment such that the equipment is in an already cleared area, approximately 1,900 feet from the Hudson River, and will not impact any views of the Hudson River or the Palisades from neighboring properties and adjacent public property and rights of way in conformance with the zoning code. Moreover, the solar energy equipment will be screened from view by fencing, landscaping, and existing mature vegetation. The solar energy equipment is unmanned, so it will cause no additional traffic to the site, and there is sufficient traffic circulation within the site to handle the installation of the equipment. There'll be no signage and there'll be no lighting. As an important feature of this particular project will be that it will be a living lab for the community, affording the community a STEM and climate change education component, open to the community to provide education about climate change and decarbonization effects of the project. The Living Lab will allow local school districts in the community as a whole to explore renewable energy and understand climate change. At this time, I would ask Lara of Tectonic to present her overview of the site plan that we've submitted and the visuals that we have done to date so the board can get a feel for the project. Lara, can you put your site plan up and just review it with the board?
Yes. Can everyone see this?
Well, it says project site plan.
We see project site plan, but not the plan itself.
Okay. Now, can we see it now?
Yes.
Okay. I apologize. I had to leave the PowerPoint just to show the PDF to have a better resolution of the plan. So the solar installation is sited on the eastern portion of the property in order to utilize the existing open space areas and the existing access to each array. The location of the installation will also minimize the impact on the tree lines and the grading of the site in order to accommodate the solar panel racking. Each installation will be enclosed by a 7-foot-high secure fence with a gate per the National Electric Code. The connection for both arrays will be one underground electric line to an existing utility pole along Broadway. The site will be accessed through the existing driveway off of Broadway at the south end of the site, and a proposed grass surface access lane will provide the sufficient width and stability for fire access to each array without adding any impervious surfaces to the site. And the site will also be designed to meet the New York State Fire Code. The location of the northern array will require altering the existing tree line, but no trees will be removed along Broadway or Ardsley Avenue. A 4-foot-high landscape berm is proposed at the southern end of the site to provide screening from Ardsley Avenue. We will consult with the landscape architect further about additional landscaping required and also some additional trees to infill some insufficient areas for screening as well. The stormwater mitigation for the project will be designed in accordance with the New York State DEC guideline on solar panel construction. The site as shown will disturb over an acre, and thus a stormwater pollution prevention plan is required. It is not anticipated that the solar installation with the grass surface access lane will increase the impervious surface area on the site. The concrete pads for the electrical equipment will be the only added impervious surfaces and can be mitigated by adding the installation of gravel trenches surrounding the equipment. Okay. And now from here, I'm going to switch back to the presentation to show you some visual simulations. Can everyone see this?
This is the title page.
Okay. So some existing photos were taken along Ardsley Avenue and Broadway, looking at the existing site, and then prepared with some evergreen plantings to show the screening proposed for the site. So the first view is looking north from Ardsley Avenue, just west of the intersection of Broadway and Ardsley, where you can see the existing open space field and the existing hedge line. The next view shows a rendering showing mature height evergreen trees, which will block the view of the array from this vantage point. The next photo is further west down Ardsley Avenue and still looking in the same direction north at the existing open field. And the next rendering shows the proposed evergreen trees, which will screen the solar array. The next photo shows on Broadway looking east towards the open field, and you can see there's some existing trees along this view. And then this shows the solar array with the mature trees planted. So the array will be barely visible. And then it is also good to note that this is during the worst case scenario during the winter months, as these photos were just taken in March. And once the foliage is on these trees, that it will not be visible at all. Here's another view further north of Broadway in the same direction towards the open space field. And with the trees, you can barely see the array. And then the last view will be further north on Broadway, showing towards the northern array, which basically shows the existing vegetation would be enough to screen that array from view as is. And I'll send it back to Leslie if we have anything further.
We have received some comments today from Han Engineering and Nolan Landscape Architects. And we look forward to working with the board and the board consultants to address these comments and modify the plan accordingly. We saw that there was, as you mentioned, Chairman comments, some in favor and some opposed. And many of those comments dealt with the visual aspect, which we look forward to working with the village's landscape architect and your engineers to address those.
Okay, is your presentation complete? We can start
Yeah.
asking some questions.
Sure, yes, at this time.
We're going to try to ask one topic at a time so we don't wander all over the place. And getting back to the letters, there were fairly comprehensive letters. They had a lot of good information in the letters, and I want to thank the people who took the time to write those letters. Let's look at some concepts before we get into the details of a specific site, because one of the major issues is seeking out alternatives, but I'll get to that. First major concept would be State Environmental Quality Review Act, and I think it'd be premature to address that at this point because we're not sure of the location. At least I'm not sure of the location of the southern, particularly the southern array. But there is one comment to make on it. We'd like to see the long form provided instead of the short form. There's a lot more information, and this is a lot of interest in this, and the additional information would be useful. And while we're talking about the form, some of the comments in the letters, I'm sure you've seen the letters, had some issues with some of the answers. I'll paraphrase. One of the questions was, in particular, was the plan proposal is in harmony or in character with the neighborhood, and your answer was yes, it is. So I think there's quite a few people who live to the south who may disagree with that evaluation. So you may have to work on that answer and plus some other answers in the long form. Mary Ann, you want to say anything?
Only one thing is that, just to make it clear to the public, that the sequel with this State Environmental Quality Review Act will be looked at. It'll be looked at thoroughly on this. But the point Chairman Manfredi is making is that if the location of the panels is shifted onto the property, it's going to mean different environmental impacts. The aesthetic impacts may change, or maybe you're going to move it someplace else that involves taking down trees. So then you have to look at those impacts. So I don't think it makes sense to start the environmental review until the board and the applicant are settled on where the arrays are going to be.
Mary Ann. The next question is, I've been here 35 years, as you said, and we're interested in the activity at this location as a school. Because one of the critical aspects of your presentation in coverage was to use 15% of the total area, and you're coming in at 12%. And I'll discuss coverage later, but I want to concentrate on the school aspect. And you're getting that coverage numbers, 15% instead of some other calculation that was used for the zone. And you're coming in at 12 because you're a school. And there's a lot of newcomers here and people who would like to understand how it operates as a school. Now, I know during the war, there were classes there for Victory Gardens, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit on the current school aspect in order to access the 15% for coverage.
The property is used for research and other educational aspects. I think actually one of the support letters indicated that they actually go to the campus and listen to lectures from time to time. I don't know if you noticed that. I can find which letter that was. We can give you a little bit more detail of what goes on at the campus if you're interested when we submit our responses for the next meeting and the next time we're heard.
Yes, I think that would be very helpful. Now, I mentioned coverage as part of the aspect of school, and the coverage needs some work. The northeast parcel was excluded in your coverage calculations, and we're not sure if all the parking areas were included. You probably did, but it's not clear that you did. Your engineer may want to work with our building inspector and engineering consultant to make sure that the coverage is properly calculated, so it's clear that what
Demonstrate.
needs to be covered is covered.
Demonstrate.
Yes.
We will do that.
And have any issues with concluding the, I guess it's the printing building, the northeast corner? The northeast corner, there's a parcel that was excluded
Right.
from.
I don't know if you're referring to the adjacent parcel that is a separate tax lot and a separate parcel. So I don't know if you're,
Yeah,
Um,
the 6 acre piece.
right.
The
So
6
that's
acre piece.
right. So
Should
we're
be included.
okay because we're
It
not
should be
technically.
We're careful about stepping on each other. Like I said, there's an audio delay. So Mary Ann, state your issue.
Yeah, it should be included. It's generally been described as a 67 acre parcel. And in other applications. And the thing is, that 6 acre parcel merged, even though it's got a different number, merged with the other one because otherwise the 6 acre parcel would be non-conforming. So just treat it as six, the entire thing is one parcel. Which it has been historically.
Okay, you got that?
Yes,
Leslie?
the records didn't indicate they were a merged parcel, but if that's the case, then it should be, I agree that it has to be treated as a merged parcel. The records we saw, they were separate tax lots and separate, it wasn't merged, so we were not aware of that.
Move on to the next topic. In terms of the power generated, in order to evaluate the compliance with the existing code and rules in the village, we'd like to know what is the level of megawatts that are being generated by these array of panels, how much is being used on site and on this particular site in Irvington, and how much is, if any, is going to be used off-site. And we need those numbers to see how it complies with the wording of our code. Expecting you to give me the numbers now, but in the next reiteration, you can have that part of a presentation.
We will review that. Again, it also, to the extent we make some modifications, it will impact how that will play out. So yeah, we can respond to that as well.
Now, this is a major consideration, the next topic, alternatives. There are the southern array, in terms of one of the goals of the planning board is projects need to be in harmony with the neighborhood, and solar panels in residential area not necessarily in harmony. So we'd like to see alternatives on site. I know from experience that there's other open fields to the west. For example, in front of the mansion, behind the mansion, there's open fields, there's a vegetable garden, there's existing roofs of buildings, existing buildings, there's parking lots that could have a canopy. So there are a lot of alternatives other than the southernmost Ardsley Avenue site. And like Mary Ann said, without determining where the site may be different than, if it's going to be different than the southern, some of the details are not something that we would look at right now until the alternatives are all worked out and the final site is agreed upon. So you need to do a lot of homework on where this might go with this less visual impact, less issues. The majority of these dozen or so letters concentrated on harmony with the community. So, and that's one of the main charges of this board, to make sure things are in harmony with the community, existing community.
We did spend quite a bit of time on alternatives, but we will again work with your consultants to look again and evaluate that. We were looking for areas where we would have to remove the least amount of trees and be close enough, to the, to be able to connect to the system. So, but we will be happy to look again and review that with your consultants and see what other alternatives there are.
Yeah, you mentioned connecting to the system. You know that we require underground
Yes.
transmission.
They will all be underground.
Underground transmission requires trenching. We would we would like to see the map of that trenching, because trenching might be digging up roots that will kill trees that you're trying to not knock down. So trenching does provide damage to trees if you're too close to the root. If you destroy some percentage of root structure, you kill the tree. And then there's the other issue of, I don't know how it interfaces with the rest of the property, but there's the aqueduct there. You may have to get around the aqueduct, and if you do, how are you going to do that with a transmission line to get past the aqueduct to the western part of the property? So alternatives is a big deal.
Understood.
You're going to need to do. Before we get any further and people forget what they wanted to ask, Mike, not just on the topics we discussed so far. Any questions?
No topic.
Dan?
Not specifically.
Michael?
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. You said that you looked at alternatives. So where else would you look on the property in concept?
We looked at the various where I know like sort of the picnic tables are and some other locations. We'll give you a detailed analysis. What I think we need to do is also discuss with your landscape architect. So we go to different other locations, we have to take down more trees, and we need to discuss that with your consultants and show you what that would mean.
Mary Ann?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, Leslie, it's not just, this is a planning board that's gonna, I mean, the consultants are important in terms of the screening, but it's the planning board that you've got to talk to about other locations, because they're the ones watching out for where it's going to impact most. And maybe when you settle on where they're going to be, then the landscape architect will help with the screening or whatever. So I don't see this as you're going to work with the consultants later, but you got to work this out with the planning board now where they're going to be. I mean, I don't mean at tonight's meeting, but at the next meeting, I see that as the next step.
You mentioned some other sites may require cutting a tree down. But for the planning board to weigh the value of a tree versus the non-harmony use of the project, it may be more valuable to cut a tree down. And then there's a replanting program that there's a lot of projects we get through here, building a house, take a tree down, okay, you take a tree down, you plant a tree. So taking a tree down is something that may be more beneficial than the current location, especially if you have a tree planting replacement plan, which would enhance some of the property. If you're taking trees down that nobody sees and you're planting trees that people see, native trees, decorative trees, it could be more of a benefit. But in that, for an alternative that requires some tree cutting. And like I said, the transmission at the existing location, the trenching may kill trees anyway, so. Michael, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Did you consider that in having to trench and have underground lines, you actually are going to go through the Croton Aqueduct?
I believe how we were trenching, and Lara, maybe you can provide more detail. We weren't, the way we have it now, we are not going through the Croton Aqueduct. But Lara, I defer to you as the engineer.
Right. Right now, it's shown just going from the northern array straight out east, connecting to a pole on Broadway. So it's just going through the Columbia property. It's nowhere near the aqueduct.
Okay. How did you decide on this? Although you can't tell us how much power is actually going to be generated, how did you decide on this configuration of the arrays? The southern one and the northern one, Because I would assume that you decided upon that because that dictates how much power you want to generate. And is it contemplated that all the power being generated is going to only be used by Columbia?
Yes, it's only going to be used, but
Yeah,
Columbia
we-
at that
we-
site.
Yeah, we talked,
Columbia on site, right.
not the Columbia down at the.
Right, it's going to be used, it's Columbia on site.
right, your code says it has to be used by the owner of the premises, and yes, it will be used by the owner of the premises. But we will, again, we picked these locations because the areas were cleared, it was closest. We're gonna look at other alternatives and present them to you, and then perhaps you will just, you will help us determine. It sounds like one array you're fine with, the array that's closest to Ardsley Avenue. We're gonna look to see what we can do to modify it accordingly. This is really just to, our
We're not,
conceptual plan. We realize that we have to do some work.
okay, we're not just concerned about the southernmost array. I want to be clear about that. But on the other hand, you were very careful. I asked, are you planning to use power off-site, even if it's something owned by Columbia? You told me it's going to be used by the owner, but you were careful in not saying that it was going to be used on-site.
Website.
So is it contemplated that this power is going to be used by Columbia off-site?
I think what we need to do is we will show how we comply with your code. I don't want to get into the details because we understand we're going to be moving, the plan is going to be modified. So I'd rather present it when we respond back, give you all the answers that all work collectively together.
Okay, and one final question. My understanding is that in order for the solar panels to work efficiently, there needs to be a buffer to the east, to the west, and to the south, not to the north. And so also my understanding is that buffer may be as much as 100 feet on the east, east and west, and 200 feet to the south. So is my understanding correct? Do you believe that you need to have that kind of buffer in order for these solar panels to work efficiently? If so, does your plan for the trees, which I appreciated seeing the full-size trees, I actually never thought that it would block the views that much. Are your trees being proposed sufficiently to allow the panels to work efficiently?
That's something you could evaluate.
I'm asking the questions.
Right, the way we have a position now, it will work, but again, we recognize that we're going to be fine tuning it. And so we will have to take into account as we enhance and modify our landscaping accordingly.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Laura, you have anything on what we've discussed already?
No, on a couple of things on her presentation. but
Yeah, all right, we'll wait for that. I don't want to wander
Yeah.
topic to topic. Okay, I'll move along down in my list here. There are, in terms of screening, not necessarily for the present locations, but in a general sense, the Taconic State Park Commission has guidelines, design guidelines on how things should look when you're on the aqueduct and looking at a project. And if you read it, it's also this board's opinion that what you presented would be something that we would want something more than what was shown in your rendering of the trees. The trees should not appear as a wall. We want to see it. The word that always comes up is punctuated, a variety of trees, different depths. So you're not looking at a wall of the same type of tree. And the aqueduct guidelines goes into that in deep. And of course, obviously, it has to be deer resistant and it has to be green, so that's not, so there's no, there's no, the foliage goes away in the winter time. So you can access, I'm sure you can access those guidelines. Plattsburgh,
Yes, I've seen those guidelines. They, they suggest that you provide at least a 30-foot buffer from the aqueduct. We maintain more than that buffer. But yes, we will, again, we'll work on a landscape plan and, we meet the guidelines so far as the buffer area, but we recognize that we have some work to do on the landscaping, et cetera. And we appreciate that.
yeah. Should you stay at the southern site, there's a knoll towards the north end of that site. Your solar panels on the north end, on the top of that knoll. The knoll was visible in one of your photographs. And the question remains, will the height of the trees be sufficient? The additional height of the solar panels because of the knoll. So if you stay at the site, that's a big if. If you stay at the site, we'd like to see sight lines from the roadway. Say, I don't know, pick the average height of a person, say 6 foot, and sight lines over the tops of the trees, so that there's a demonstration by elevations of what you might see with the presentation of sight lines on a rendering. That the sight line will clear the tops of whatever one might see.
Understood.
You covered the fact that you need this SWIP plan. We talked about the trenching. Iconic Park. Your presentation, you need to just document that the view preservation is minimal impact or no impact. I mean, I think it's fairly clear that it's probably not an impact, but you need to demonstrate that. One of the letters,
I assume
it's something that
with the demonstration, are you looking, what would you like us to show?
Pictures.
Pictures? Okay, thank you.
So in the letters, are there health issues associated with solar panels in their functioning? There's always health issues with the microwave and antennas for phones and so forth. Is there anything associated with these panels? And another sun reflection. I mean, the screening may prevent this, but if you're driving by and the sun's just right, you're going to get blinded by reflection off the glass. It's glass. So you need to mention that somewhere.
Yeah, there won't be, I know people are concerned about glare and there'll be no negligible glare. That's why they actually have solar arrays even at airports, but we'll put that into the, give you the information on that.
And finally, from my point of view, the business relationship contract listed seen it in Columbia. We don't have it, but I'm sure you'll be able to present it. I have one last point. Technology could change. I have a concern that if technology concerns and these things become obsolete, they're going to sit there and rust away. If you could have some sort of takedown procedure, that somebody either Siemens or Columbia, that if these are no longer in use, they would be dismantled and rehabilitated to its original shape.
I don't think that if they're no longer being utilized, which seems the wave of the country is obviously to try to avoid us having fossil fuel use and more these types of energies. But yes, if they're abandoned, we'll have a provision that we have to take them down and remove them, and it'll go back to the cleared area.
To just take the computer program. I mean, when I went to school, a computer fit in a room this size of this conference room, and now it fits on your wrist. So assuming technology marches on and these become up, the array becomes obsolete because you can now fit it on a dime. I just want to make sure they don't sit there and rust away and become an eyesore.
Understood. Understood.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Open up to any new topics, anything that's been talked about. Mike?
I did want to just kind of reinforce a comment that you made. Aqueduct guidelines, because the response was specifically about the buffers, but I think you were at least partially pointing out that the types consideration of the screening is different because of the aqueduct guidelines, and specifically as it relates to a single species wall, and that is covered extensively in the guidelines. So it's not just the buffer off of the aqueduct, but
yes,
the screenings and the makeup of the types of trees that are in there is extensively covered in the guidelines. So I want to make sure that that's also addressed, not just.
Yes, if there was any misunderstanding that the type of screening we're opposed to a single wall of trees. It's not just for the visual from the applicant, it's also from any other avenues that the public can see. We'd like to see not a wall of the same tree, but like punctuated look of natural, different trees, different depths. Anything else, Mike?
I also want to make sure that when I know that you're going to come back with our consumption, but I think making sure that that's broken down by, or at least specifically pointing out what is used by the labs on site. I know that making the distinction between the owner and the labs themselves and the campus, but I don't want that question to come up again at the next meeting, but I can be sure that the board is going to want to know is actually used by Columbia in the Nevis Lab site. Being broken out. Yep.
Dan?
Just a question. Siemens and Columbia have done this several times before, or at least once, or what exactly have they done in the past in reference to a project like this?
They have been working collaboratively, and we can indicate what they've done before. I myself don't have all the details on that.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm good for the time being. Yeah.
The other Mike?
I have no further questions.
Lori?
I love that Columbia wants to do solar panels, and I'm looking forward to seeing other options that you'll present next time. Part of your presentation talks about connection to community and building a living lab for the local school districts. I love that idea. You already have lab and research on site. I'd love to see a Columbia community liaison talking to the schools about that now, not waiting, because the school system has science research and STEM. So I'd like them to demonstrate that sooner than later. That's it.
Thank you, Lori. Anything else from the board? Okay, we'll now move to the
Caesar.
public. Oh, sorry.
Caesar, I just had a couple things. I
Go
wanted
right
to
ahead.
respond. I just wanted to correct Leslie on something. To clarify something. You said that you're here for site plan approval, because of the view preservation district. That's an additional review you've got, but you're there for just regular site plan approval because it's a building in the village that fits the solar panels fit the definition of building. The reason that's significant is besides the standards for view preservation, you have to look at the regular standards for site development plan approval. You understand? You said that a couple of times. Your letter also that I don't think in your letter or the affidavit from I guess it was from the man of Siemens suggested you were here because of the view preservation, but you're here just generally for site plan.
Well, I think if we weren't in the view, I believe if we weren't in the view preservation district, then we would be before the architectural review board and go through that process.
No.
I believe that's
No.
That's how your code is written. But we can discuss that. We don't need to.
No, we don't need to discuss it. I'm just telling you, that's what the code says, what the code provides. And just one other thing, is hopefully you're going to move the solar arrays, but well, maybe you're not going to move the one further to the north. But we should also have visuals from the aqueduct. The visuals from Broadway and Ardsley Avenue were helpful, but they also need visuals from the aqueduct. The same kind of thing, but visuals from the aqueduct. That's all.
Yeah, the visuals, you should also include the sight lines as we discussed for the road on the aqueduct. Okay. Ed, Doug?
We're good for now.
Okay. Sarah, do we have any hands in the, well, let's do the in-person first. We have in person, all right, the gentleman in the first row.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. Great. I'm Alex McLaughlin. I live at 47 Ardsley Avenue West. So I'll make it brief. I really want to thank the board for reviewing this application, taking it very seriously. I've been before the board myself. Some of my neighbors have been before the board. I like watching the board meetings, actually, because it's kind of fun. And I think that as applications go, I think this is one of the most complex applications that's ever come before the board that I've seen. You may have seen more complicated, but I find it to be incredibly complex. We've got a really big structure being put next to a residential area that is going to establish a certain precedent potentially. So I think this has to be addressed and approached in a very careful way. And so I really appreciate all the comments you've made so far. I think there's many other comments and details that you could go into that some of my neighbors may want to go into as well. I think that the presentation from the applicant was actually incredibly simple for how complex this issue really is. So I hope they can come back, having reviewed all the letters from the neighbors and community, and actually address those points one by one. I think if you look at the addresses of the letters that are opposed to this project, right, they're immediately adjacent to this project. The ones that are in favor, I don't think are adjacent to the project. So in terms of a message about harmony with the community, you are getting that from the neighbors. You need to take that into account. All right. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your careful consideration of this application.
Thank you very much. In defense of the applicant, they recognized it was a very preliminary submission and it was lacking in detail because we're not sure of the locations. So I'm sure the next go around will be in greater detail, not only addressing what the board has raised, but they also have copies of the letters. And I'm sure they're competent enough to deal with all those comments. I think the young lady behind you had her hand raised.
Yes. Thank you so much. Ann Chappie Holmes, 22 South Ferris in Irvington. And thank you, Planning Board. Wonderful input and questions, and working with the process is very good. I'm very grateful to be a part of this. And Lori, I wanted to thank you for pointing out this tremendous potential gift to the community of Irvington and to the people of our region of this living lab. The educational potential of this project is huge because the state of New York, as you all know, is determined to move to 100% net renewable energy by 2050. That means that many, many young people are going to be engaged in renewable energy careers. It's a beautiful thing that they will have the chance to engage with Columbia University and Nevis site on learning about how you think about these things and how they go and what the environmental impacts are. Furthermore, I'm going to also encourage the planning board. It's beautiful, the knowledge that you're bringing and working with in this about the planting. It needs to be diverse, not just a wall of evergreens or whatever, but a diverse, ecologically intelligent planting plan. But there's also many studies that are showing that you can use the land underneath solar panels to support pollinators and food crops and other interesting things. And the school districts, as Lori said, could be brought in now to start talking with Columbia Nevis about that Living Lab program and design the program with Columbia Nevis so that it's a community engagement, not just an installation of clean energy for the future, but also a collaboration with the community. So thank you for that. And thank you all for your work.
Thank you. Yeah, gentleman just raised his hand over here.
Hi, I'm Chris Lando. I live at 3 Ardsley Avenue East, so right across Broadway from the proposed southern site. My wife and I moved here about 2 years ago. Really excited about the focus on green space, the many parks that Irvington has. I recognize that Columbia's property is not a park, but it is adjacent to the aqueduct, which is a huge draw for us coming out of Manhattan. While I recognize the application is highly preliminary, I was a bit taken aback that it was not addressed the impact that this would have to the aqueduct. It seemed pretty significant oversight. There's questions about is this next to a nationally registered historical place? That the applicant answered no. Well, the aqueduct trail has been historically landmarked since 1992. I think that's an important consideration as we consider where this installation could go. Consideration is in addition to where people could see from standing on the road, as was demonstrated in some photos. We could share photos from our home, which is slightly elevated. I think it would be nice if the applicant took into consideration what the adjacent neighbors are looking at when they look out of their homes on Ardsley Avenue West and on Broadway, because some of those windows, and just given the heights of properties, are looking directly onto that field. What was a beautiful instance now contemplated to be a very large scale, I'd say 1,000-field application. Libby worked for a solar developer before deciding to be a stay-at-home mom, so she loves clean energy. She is a big proponent of it. We estimate that the proposed installation is about a megawatt, which is a big commercial application. So I think the village has to take a view as to what it intended in a single family zone, which is where its property is that in harmony with the spirit of the zoning law, which was to allow an accessory use for solar equipment. Just as an aside to all this, we received a note from the applicant. It was very brief. There was a bullet saying that it was proposed installation of solar equipment. Have we not seen various personnel measuring, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, it's a homeowner with something so significant as occurring, it would be helpful if there's a little more substance to the formal notification. I'm glad that the community raised awareness quickly, but it's bigger than what your neighbor in a single family home might propose to do to their property, which doesn't rise to this occasion. So thank you. And thank you all for your careful consideration of all the submissions and the questions that you have.
Thank you. A thought resulting from the what gentleman just said, you may want to include sight lines from some of the windows across the street. It's just an additional sight line that this would be something to look at. And I skipped over one of my concerns. Solar guidelines, it talks about not for a house. It talks about not in the side yard. I'm sorry, it should be located in the side yard or the rear yard. Granted, this is not fit those guidelines, but the intent and spirit of that it wasn't going to be in the front yard of a house. And this might be considered front yard in terms of legislative intent, not to be seen from the road. That's why they wanted it. The Board of Trustees wanted it in the side yard or the rear yard, not the front, so that it's not obvious to the roadway. Is there anybody else in person that wants to speak? Yes. Leslie, when the in-person people are finished talking, I'm going to ask you if you have any comment, if they may want to leave, and then we'll go to the Zoom comment.
Good evening, Michael Sirota, 3 Beechwood Road. I am on the east side of Broadway, directly across from the north lawn. So as Chris mentioned, and Chairman, you mentioned, I'd like to see sightlines from an elevated view, especially on the north lawn, not only the south lawn. The north lawn is, as you mentioned, is a little bit raised, and it makes the
When you say the north lawn, you mean the north part of the southern, not the northern.
Yes, the north, yeah, the north part of the where they're planning to put the solar.
The second step.
The second, yeah.
Yeah, the
Second
northern step.
Kind of goes a little up.
No, Mary Ann, he's talking about the southern site has the raised elevation at the north end of the southern site.
No, so maybe
I'm missing it.
Okay, so from across the street, we're raised a little on Beechwood. So when you look directly across, it's a little elevated.
Which site?
Where the northern
proposed.
I
misunderstood.
So, and I believe the houses behind me kind of go up the hill, so they're higher elevations and definitely can see that site. So I'd like to see in the plan different sight lines, as you mentioned, what the elevations of the trees, how tall they would be, what the screening will look like. Because I don't think just from Broadway, if it's blocked from Broadway, it would be enough. Also, I'd like to see, there's a ton of wildlife, many family deer, a lot of deer that roam that area. I don't know if it's a good thing or bad. Just the impact of wildlife by putting this solar up there. Is it gonna displace wildlife? Will it bring more wildlife? I don't know, it's just some sort of study.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. I can attest that I've driven by and seen over a dozen deer there. Anybody else in person? Okay, Leslie, you have it?
Could I actually, how many people actually work at that site?
I don't know. I'll have to
That
get you
have
the
a
number.
site.
I can't, I don't know. I don't know. I'll have to get you the number of people.
All right, in case the people who are here in person may want to leave, you have any thoughts on what you heard so far?
You know, I understand the concern about the landscaping and that we've got to vary our landscaping plan. And again, you know, we are receptive and we'll work with your consultants and come back with something to, you know, to that effect. Obviously, everyone likes to be able to just, you know, people don't like change. We understand that. And, you know, but there's nothing, I don't mean it disrespectfully to anyone, but just, you know, they may look at an open expense now, but that's, you know, that's not guaranteed. There's no, you know, you're allowed to utilize your land, as I know the planning board is aware of. So yeah, we will address these comments. I just, you know, we believe that this is a great use and we appreciate the support that we've gotten, and we want to work collaboratively with the village and the community to get a project that provides both the energy needs and also enhances the community.
Again, the operative word of in harmony with the existing neighborhood was mentioned. And it is a charge of this planning board to ensure harmony with existing neighborhood and the residential particulars across the street. So just want to emphasize that. Sarah, do you have any hands raised or?
Yes, Lino Sharetta has his hand raised to speak. Lino?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We're not seeing you, but maybe you don't have a camera.
I do have a camera.
Is it when I give them permission to speak, they can't be on camera? Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. We got your audio. We're not going to see you.
So I wore a suit and tie for nothing, Mr. Chairman.
I was just going to say, if you wore a jacket and tie, it was to no avail.
I am, but thank you. Thank you very much. Well, first of all,
One second. And because we're on audio, the audio is delayed in this mixed hybrid use of Zoom. So we're going to let you complete your statement, and then you're going to let us talk without interruption, because any interruptions is stepped on the line and the minutes get all filed up. So you're on.
Understood, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, village council, staff. For the record, Lino Sharetta, partner with the law firm of Blakely, Platt and Schmidt, representing the Ardsley Park Homeowners Association this evening. First of all, Mr. Chairman, thank you for having me. Many of the concerns that I will state tonight, you've heard, and I will applaud the board and you, Mr. Chairman, for already bringing out some of these issues that is associated with this project. So just by way of background, first of all, I laud renewable energy. As a land use attorney, I've done my share of renewable energy, but I will say what makes this application complex, and just to borrow a word from one of the residents, is you have what really amounts to, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, a solar farm in the middle of a residential neighborhood. In my experience, you see these types of solar farms in this size, 5 acres, you're like on landfills, off of highways, industrial zones. But to have something like this to be called, and I'm using quotes here, accessory use in a residential zone and neighborhood such as this is something that this board we really have to look at, Mr. Chairman. So just a couple of threshold points. I know you mentioned that there's some type of agreement between Siemens and Columbia. That should be produced to the board, and I would hopefully the applicant would produce that. The application refers to a land use agreement. I don't know what that means, but I think it's important because when you look at this application, it talks about that this installation of this solar field is part of Columbia's sustainability plan to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Now, the reason why that's key, and I would put a pin in that, is because when you look at the zoning code, and when you look at the definition of the accessory use here, it specifically states that solar energy equipment provided that is used only to provide power for use by owners, lessees, tenants, residents, and other occupants, and this is the key, of the premises on which it is erected. I know that question was asked of the applicant, and I know Leslie, and I know her, I heard her answer, but that's something that, and I know you've stated, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, you're gonna need the metrics for that, because I would just tell you that on a 5-acre solar field, that's basically enough equipment to generate approximately 1 megawatt of electricity, which is enough to power 1,000 homes. Now, we also know that Columbia University has property outside of Irvington's borders. So that provision of the code talks about servicing the premises on which it is erected. So we need to know details and metrics if that is the case, if this is serving strictly Columbia's property on site, or if this indeed is going to serve as part of their sustainability program on its other campuses. So again, I appreciate that the board mentioned that, and it's something that needs to be looked at. Another threshold item, I know the village attorney mentioned it. This is a structure, i.e. a building, Site plan is required here, and I'm glad to see that that was noted. The other thing I would note too is that Columbia, at least historically, has always been an educational facility and a school. So when my reading of the code says that this is a special permitted use as an educational facility. So that being the case, I would like to know, and again, this is for something that for future reference and something for the village board to take a look at, what is the current special permit for Columbia say? And if this is indeed an expansion of that special permit, I would think that Columbia would have to come in and apply for a renewal or an expansion of that special permit as well. Again, just something for the board to consider. With respect to this issue of the guidelines, we heard about the compliance with solar energy equipment guidelines. These are in the code. These have to be followed. And I know we mentioned about, that these have to be located in a side or rear yard only and should comply with all setback requirements. And these have to be complied with, and these need to be looked at very carefully. And you said it before, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, the key thing is they have to demonstrate to the board that all reasonable options have been considered to achieve compliance with the solar equipment guidelines. And that's stated in the code. You got to look at alternatives. I heard the answer that was given about what alternatives were looked at, but again, I wasn't satisfied with the answer, and I hope the applicant will provide some further insight into that. A couple of other points, and again, bear with me. I know we've gone through some of this, Mr. Chair. Whether this is truly accessory needs to be looked at, and someone needs to opine on that, because I'm not so sure that it is. This application, it really is a precedent-setting event in this village. You have what is a solar field, and this statute came into effect back in 2017. I went through some of the minutes, but I'd be curious. I know someone mentioned about legislative intent here, and when I read this, and again, it's something that we should look at. Is what did the village board really contemplate back here? Did they really contemplate a solar farm being erected in the middle of a residential neighborhood? I understand that you have solar panels on homes, which may be either on the ground or installed on rooftops, but I'm not sure if this is something that was contemplated back in 2017 when this law was adopted. So I would urge your board to look into that to see what the legislative intent was of that statute. Another point that I'd like to raise, we talk about glare. Glare is a big issue. Should the applicant and this board get past that threshold issue as to whether this is really an accessory use, this needs to be looked at. And from an environmental standpoint and SECRA, I know we talked about that this is preliminary tonight. The board has to look at it. But I would say because this is over 25 acres or more, it borders an historic landmark. I mean, with respect to the aqueduct, which was added on the registry in 1992, this should be a type 1 action. This should be POSDEC. And again, it's something that you could take a look at, but this is a complex project and I think rises to that level of doing a full-blown environmental assessment here, given the fact that it is 5 acres and it's on property of 20, it affects 25 acres or more on this site. And we think that a full-blown environmental study should be done, which would include a glare study. We think the planning board needs to take a hard look with respect to tree removal, with respect to whether or not screening is sufficient. Alternatives, we talked about the location. Is it better suited somewhere else, assuming this use is permitted? We need to look at the visual impacts to users of the old Croton Aqueduct Trail. How will that installation impact the View Preservation District and the old Croton Aqueduct, which was added, like I said, in 1992? Another thing that we will provide, and one of the residents mentioned it, there are many homes in Ardsley Park that will face this solar field, and we have pictures which we will present to the board that clearly show that this is visible right in front of their homes. And again, I don't think that anyone in Ardsley Park or anybody in this residential neighborhood contemplating staring out their window and looking at a massive 5-acre solar field. So again, this all goes to SECRA, it goes to visual impacts. It's something that this board, we would hope, would consider. The village should look into hiring consultants that the applicant should pay for to look at these issues. I know your code provides for escrow for this type of project and review. We encourage that the village do that. The other thing I'd like to mention is on the decommissioning plan. Someone mentioned that there should be a decommissioning plan should the useful life of this solar field it becomes obsolete. That should be part of any approval, again, assuming you get past the threshold question of this project. What will happen once it reaches the end of its useful life? We talked about SECR, the EAF. There are some problems with it. I would encourage, and you've stated, Mr. Chairman, that a long form should be done, but there are some questions. For example, number 6 on the EAF talks about whether the action is consistent with the predominant character of the existing built or natural landscape. I don't know how the applicant answered yes to that, but again, I think that's a bit of a stretch given the type of application that's being proposed here and the neighborhood in which it's located. The other item that the EAF needs to be revised is item 12A, which states that does the project site contain or is it substantially contiguous to a building, archaeological site, district, which is listed on the National or State Register of Historic Places, or that has been determined by the Commissioner of New York State Office in Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation to be eligible for listing on the State Registry of Historic Places. The applicant answered no, but the aqueduct was added and that should be revised as part of the EAF. Another thing I noticed that this application only addresses impact to the Hudson River, which the proposed construction is not near. The application neglects the significant impact this installation will have on Broadway and the aqueduct, and the application itself is inaccurate in its characterization of the aqueduct, which is in fact naturally registered. Even if the structures were permissible, again, I go back to that threshold question, which we shouldn't lose sight of. It's been proposed that this current area, we respectfully submit, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, is ill-advised because, quite frankly, this is the gateway to a residential community and a public park in the village. And it's been in that pristine condition. And quite frankly, another alternative should be looked at here rather than the current location. The suggested screening probably will not be sufficient to block views of the equipment from sidewalks from Ardsley Avenue West due to the elevation difference and the different vantage points. So this also needs to be looked at because, again, there's elevation differences here. And we believe that some of the screening or even the fencing may exceed what's required per code. So again, these are my initial comments, Mr. Chairman. This will be followed up with a written submission, which I'm happy to share with the applicant as well. And again, there are lots of answers that are needed here. I want to thank this board for the opportunity. I know it's a long night, but I thank you for the time. I know there are other residents here from Ardsley Park that may want to be heard this evening. But again, those are my initial comments to this application. And again, it will be followed up in a written submission with photographs for the record. So again, I thank you and appreciate the time to be heard this evening. Thank you very much.
Very much for your presentation. A couple of thoughts. That was a rather long presentation, and we hope it's 9:45 that stick to some pertinent facts, and as Scaretta mentioned, we're already covered. So let's try not to be redundant. You may want to say you've already covered this, but I want to reinforce it without going into a time-consuming, lengthy conversation on something we already had a lengthy conversation on. I don't want to restrict you in what you're saying, but I want to save time because it's getting late for everybody. Sarah?
There is nobody else raising their hand to speak, and there are no comments in the chat.
Really?
Really?
No.
All right. Oh, I'm sorry.
We must have done it.
Now somebody
We
raising.
must have done a very good job.
Now somebody raising their hand. Ron Cherry.
Hi, thank you for giving me just a quick moment to speak. I noticed that in one of the documents I saw, there was a mention of chain link fence surrounding the property, and I don't think that came up tonight. So I had a question on how that might fit into all this planning with buffers and trees and things of that nature. And is the chain link fence to keep people out or keep things in? I wasn't sure what it was for. Is it to stop kids from coming in? Is there barbed wire going to be on top of the fence so that vandals can't get into it and tamper with the solar panels themselves? That's all I have. Thank you.
Don't go away. I'm not a big fan of chain link fences, and we do look at what a fence looks like and whether the fence will be inside the screening of the foliage, which would be preferred. In other words, you won't even see any fence. But if you do see the fence, it needs to be something in keeping with the environment that it's in. It's not an industrial area for chain link fence with barbed wire. Anyway, Leslie, you have any thought on the fence or anything else that was said?
Yeah, we're not planning any barbed wire, and the fence is obviously for security, but the plantings would conceal the fence in any event. But again, we'll be coming back with a proper, more detailed landscape plan.
Okay, and then I
Do you
guess.
have any thought? Go ahead, Ron.
I had one more question.
Ron,
Yeah, just generally speaking, obviously, the visibility of this project obviously is a major concern for everybody. And, you did a nice job kind of showing the trees blocking things, but should this solar farm be visible to traffic on Broadway, even if it's just during the winter when the trees may not have coverings on them? My concern would be that it might be like a rubbernecking situation where people who are driving down Broadway are saying, "Oh wow, look at that solar farm," and not necessarily paying attention to the road. And Broadway has no shoulders on it. There's no sidewalk on one side of Broadway. And there are kids that cross that are walking back and forth to the schools. There are families that cross to walk their dogs along the aqueduct. There are bikers on Broadway. And so, obviously, I have a concern that if there were visibility at any point, from this project anywhere on Broadway, distracted drivers could become hazardous in those areas.
Thank you. Have anything else?
That's it. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you for taking the time to appear. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's somebody raising their hand to speak, and there is a comment in the chat.
Do the comment first.
Okay. I just want to get, the last name is cut off. Susie Barnett, her comment is during and following installation, which will be an additional environmental impact and patrols throughout the night in the area. Okay, and
Before you go, Leslie, you have any vision on increased security patrolling the area, which would be invasive to the nature of the neighborhood?
No, there won't be a need. We don't foresee there'll be a need for additional security. There'll be remote monitoring of the facility, and there already is security at the Columbia campus.
And the person that has their hand raised is Henry Lindeman.
Okay, want to put it through?
Thank you very much to the board for all the consideration on this evening. I'll keep it really brief, but I just wholeheartedly disagree that there's any aspect of this project, that's in harmony with the neighborhood, and I'll leave it at that. I just wanted to add to the chorus of people who have questions and concerns about that. So thank you very much.
Is that it?
That's it. It's 10 to 10.
Yeah. Well, the operative word has been harmony all night. I'm glad we're all in harmony personally, but we'd like to see the site in harmony with the residential nature of the neighborhood. Thank you very much for your comment. Sarah, anybody else?
Nobody else is raising their hand to speak, and there are no additional comments in the chat.
That's usually a measure of what kind of job we've done, so I guess we did a good job. Mary Ann, legal things, Mr. Boy, I can't think of his name.
the Leo.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? No. Any?
I had just one.
You need to come up to the microphone.
I just wanted to add a fact.
Identify yourself again.
Chris Lando, 3 Avenue East. Ron Trey brought up a point on traffic safety, just the visual distraction. I just wanted to add to people's knowledge, since we moved in 2 years ago, there have been 2 traffic accidents at that intersection, and it's been an area of concern for us in general, because we have a 2-year-old and have to cross that street. Recognize it's a state road and we can't, as Irvington, fix it, but adding to the problem.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else from in person? No, anything else?
No, there's nobody raising their hand and there are no additional comments.
Leslie, you have any questions? We're finished here with the board and
No, we thank you
further
for your
questions?
time. We thank you for your time and we will address your comments accordingly. Thank you very much.
well, thank you. And I'm sure this is all going to work out. We're all reasonable people. And again, I can't emphasize the word harmony with the area anymore when you're looking at the alternatives that we discussed. Thank you very much for the presentation. I would like to thank all the public who wrote all their letters. Some of them were quite lengthy, but they're very on point. And it took time to do that. And thank you for the time that you did. And people who showed up in person, thank you very much. I think we're done. Anybody over here? Ed, Doug?
I'm good.
Okay, we're done. Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. I'm going to close the meeting and that's the end. I was waiting all night to hit this gavel.
Wait, wait, wait.